Cultural Competent Care for the Chinese Individual by Sarah Olin, December 5th, 2015. This presentation will focus on the Chinese culture and, more importantly, Chinese individuals living in the United States. It'll explore religious beliefs, cultural practices, and how health is viewed throughout the culture. It is important to note that the presentation will focus on the majority of Chinese beliefs. However, based on location and birthplace, it is not uncommon to see different beliefs and practices amongst the Chinese culture. Before further exploring the Chinese culture and health beliefs in this culture, it's important to first address cultural competency. Exactly what is cultural competency? According to Andrews and Bull, cultural competency is an integration of knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, skills, and encounters with those from cultures different from one's own that enhances cross-cultural communication and appropriate and effective interactions with others. So why is cultural competency important and necessary? As the U.S. population becomes more diverse, it is important to expand one's cultural competency in order to decrease health disparities among ethnic groups and ultimately to provide safe, quality nursing care. To provide culturally competent care, we must seek to understand different cultures' health beliefs, family involvement in health, gender roles in different cultures, dietary preferences and restrictions, spiritual and religious beliefs, and common practices amongst the culture. Again, we will be discussing the Chinese culture throughout this presentation. Listed above are just some basic beliefs and attitudes regarding health in the Chinese culture. The first one states, the strategy of Chinese medicine is to restore harmony. Next, the traditional Chinese approach to health and illness focuses on the balance between body, mind, and spirit, commonly expressed as yin and yang. And finally, self-medication is generally the first step in incidents of illness. So now that we've briefly discussed the health beliefs of the Chinese individual, let's look at the demographics of this culture. Currently, the Chinese population is the third largest born group, and there are over 2 million Chinese individuals in the United States. They encompass 5% of the foreign population. English, Mandarin, and Cantonese are the most popular languages spoken, and Buddhism, Christianity, and Taoism are the most practiced religions among the Chinese. So now I'm further going to go into some of the health beliefs of the Chinese population, many of which you'll see have reoccurring themes. So one of the first one is Confucianism. This is based off the beliefs of harmony and respect for parents and loyal to family. Next is Taoism. This promotes the belief that a person will gain power and strength if he or she behaves with the nature of the universe. And the next major health belief is yin and yang. This is a very big health belief amongst the Chinese and one that we'll see throughout this presentation. The yin and yang principle states it's a balance between body, mind, and spirit. Balance may be internal and external, hot and cold, and could be perceived as emptiness and excess. Yin and yang are viewed as dynamic, complementary, and not necessarily oppositional. They symbolize the principle that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Because one cannot exist without the other, an imbalance can lead to illness. Adding to the theory of yin and yang also has to do with the Chinese diet. Chinese individuals believe that diet plays a role in health and well-being. Because both food and illness can be classified as hot, which is yang, or cold, yin, to restore balance, a yang illness is usually treated with yin foods and vice versa. And finally, the Chinese utilize foods, herbs, and special soups to treat illness, and often treat illnesses first with these remedies before seeking professional medical care. So again, I'll expand on the dietary preferences, because this is a big role in the Chinese belief towards illness. I'd mentioned the yin and yang foods. So yin foods are hot foods and yang foods are cold foods. And an imbalance of these can cause to an illness. So yin foods can be anything such as vegetables, fruits, and cold liquids. Yang foods consist of meats, eggs, and hot beverages. So based off the yin and yang foods, it's common to see a balance of yin and yang foods as to not cause this imbalance. An example would be a dish that's made with meat and vegetables. So you have both your yin and your yang food. So actually an interesting fact, based off of a survey done in 2009 by Daniel Lay, it showed that Chinese people ate a more Western breakfast and then continued to eat traditional Chinese food for lunch and dinner. So even though we have a big population of Chinese people in the United States, and some of them have since immigrated over 100 years, they still have a very true belief in their diet and avoid more Western foods. So more of the Western foods include fried foods and foods that are high in fat. The 5 traditional flavors of a proper Chinese diet are sour, bitter, sweet, pungent, and salty. It's also important to note that hot tea and chicken soup are also utilized when sick, so it's not uncommon for a Chinese patient to question what foods to eat, especially when they're using Western medicine additionally. So ultimately, dietary preferences are important for the practicing RN to know for this culture. It's important to know the likes, dislikes, and especially the balance between yin and yang foods. So these are just some common health beliefs that most Chinese people believe in. Consult the eldest member of the family, usually with any decision, especially a medical one or a financial one. Chinese individuals prefer the same-sex health care provider. Oftentimes, no eye contact is permitted or used during conversation. The Chinese are known to speak more softly and also use traditional treatments. So basic behavior seen when acting with the Chinese individual can include shyness, especially in unfamiliar environments. And some of these traditional treatments I'll mention include acupuncture, massage, and the use of herbs and metals. So next we'll go into childbearing women. So when a child is born, it is thought that it brings joy and wealth to the family. We also have up here that male children are preferred. Male children are preferred due to the fact that it used to be in China you can only have a 1-child maximum. So although this has recently changed to a 2-child maximum, it's still traditional that males are seen as more valuable in the family. And a lot of this is because they bring more income into the family, and back in more traditional times, males were more helpful for doing more strenuous labor, and females eventually were married off into a male family and therefore were never again part of their own family and didn't bring any wealth or income into the family. So all actions of the expectant mother will influence the unborn child. This is another really important factor because this again brings in the harmony. So one of the beliefs is that if a mother is around something negative, such as a funeral or a sad event, this could affect the baby. And also that the baby is not to be dressed in any used clothes due to the belief that the baby could take on characteristics of the previous owner. There are certain activities that childbearing women also refrain from, such as not lifting anything over the head, not lifting anything heavy. They also refrain from eating bean sprouts and bananas. So when the actual delivery comes, when it comes to a Chinese patient, they tend to lean more on family support versus pain medications. So next we'll talk about children 0 to 17 years of age and adults 18 to 64 years of age. There's not really too much uncommon practices between these two age groups. So if you're taking care of someone who is a child, say 0 to 17 years of age, it's not uncommon for you to see them be stoic, have little emotional expression, and definitely are obedient to their parent. Oftentimes these children will avoid eye contact, and decisions of their health care are made by the eldest in the family. Children are also expected to care for their siblings and family members. And again, with these often limited emotional expressions. It's sometimes hard to diagnose these children with anxiety and depression, which is actually a pretty common diagnosis not only in this age group but also in this culture. So through the Confucius and Taoism, another thought to bring to this is that any emotional expression is thought to be harmful and can cause an imbalance of harmony. So these also apply to adults 18 to 64 years of age. Oftentimes there's a group consensus made when there is a medical diagnosis, so keep in mind this can delay care. Always pay attention to nonverbal cues. And then also there is some blood work that may be refused because blood is considered a renewable energy source. So oftentimes this energy source cannot be replaced per Chinese beliefs, so cholesterol tests and other blood work may not seem deemed necessary. And there's also masked health problems within this culture because there is a negative cultural attitude towards certain diseases. So the biggest significance usually is seen in the Chinese patient who's over the age of 65 years of old. So they're usually cared by adult children. They still are the decision maker in the family, and they base their life off of happiness, lies in contentment. They let nature take its course, and they have a perfective self-balance. So their medicine, when you get to a certain age, especially 65 years and older, focuses more on holistic treatment. Again, this patient is at peace. They know it's going to be an unavoidable loss. They're looking for happiness and harmony. They're looking at satisfaction within one's life. They're less apt for aggressive treatment, and they feel a sense of responsibility to take care of the rest of their lives. Death and dying rituals. Death and dying rituals are usually determined by the age of the person. So with that being said, bachelor and bachelorettes are not brought back home if they do die, and they remain at the funeral parlor. No elder individual pays respect to someone lesser in the age, so that's why the dying rituals are determined by the age of the person. This applies to children as well. The color red is avoided due to the belief that this will return and turn the deceased one into a ghost. And often when there is a funeral, the family is positioned in order of family rank around the coffin. Saving face is another belief that pretty much means discussing death will also again interfere with that harmony which we keep bringing up. So community. So some interesting facts. The largest Chinese populations reside in New York and California, more specifically San Francisco, Los Angeles, and the New York City area. There are several Chinatowns within the United States. These Chinatowns were created to provide a transitional place for people of a new culture, and they usually can be distinguished by a large red archway. Within these Chinatowns, there are traditional foods, businesses, and specialty shops. So these specialty shops sell incense, they sell paper money that is burned at traditional funerals. They also sell Chinese herbs and spices. Within these communities are also special events that are celebrated, such as the Chinese New Year and the Mid-Autumn Festival. Also, it's important to know that in these communities, they speak their fluent language. They have newspapers, news stations, and radio programs all in their native language, and they've actually been able to maintain a very good sense of culture within their community. So to summarize everything, we have the Confucius, the Taoism, and some Christianity. Illness stems from imbalance and lack of harmony. That's our yin and yang. Elders are respected. They're the decision makers in the family. Eye contact is sometimes avoided. Same-sex providers are preferred. Yin and yang is a major belief of health and wellness. Diet and herbs play a significant role in healing and warding off illnesses. So ultimately, all this should be able to provide the practicing RN with a better sense of cultural competence and how to approach a patient who is of a Chinese background. References provided. Thank you very much.